This is Health Yeah, your weekly update on what's going on in the health, wellness, and medical world with Monica Robbins.
Vasectomy. Just hearing the word makes most men cringe, but it's a decision many men, including younger ones, have opted for to limit their odds of fatherhood. This week, we'll explore the reasons behind the spike in men getting snipped, plus what couples need to know about their sex lives after a vasectomy. And is it true that March is a popular time for vasectomies due to March Madness, or is that just an old urban legend? Our national verified team checks it out. Also, a medicated cream being tested as a first of its kind male birth control. Some say it could be a reproductive game changer. It's all straight ahead on this week's Prescription for Life. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Monica Robbins. It's a minor surgery with huge implications. A vasectomy prevents pregnancy better than any other method besides abstaining from sex altogether. In 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, ending the federal right to an abortion. 6 months after that decision, Planned Parenthood Northwest reported seeing a spike in vasectomies. Julie Calhoun takes a look back at how that decision played a role in the uptick.
In the moments following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade this summer, protests erupted, pushing back on the loss of reproductive rights. At the same time, more men like Evan were finding ways to be an ally.
Half the country has lost a right.
Evan knew children weren't in his future, and a vasectomy was the procedure he considered. But the fall of Roe sealed the deal.
Just thinking about all my friends that this could affect made me want to do something.
And he's not the only one. Planned Parenthood Northwest says there's been a 34% increase in men getting vasectomies since Roe overturned.
Pregnancy requires two people, and it's not fair that the burden falls on one person just because they're the one that can get pregnant.
With more than a dozen states now banning abortions, Dr. Grace, the director of vasectomy services with Planned Parenthood, says it sparked a shared contraceptive responsibility, with one patient even describing the procedure as an act of love.
I had another patient say that they felt that their partner's rights were getting taken away, and getting the vasectomy was the least they could do.
The procedure has been around for decades, and Dr. Grace wasn't shocked by the recent spike.
Men are interested in learning about contraception, and they're interested in a vasectomy. I think that the change in our political climate has brought ideas and motivations that were there, but to the surface.
And for Evan, he hopes more men have a shift in mindset.
It isn't a time to be afraid about standing up for what you believe in.
Now to our expert with how the procedure works, the side effects, and the recovery time. Joining me now is Dr. Revti Belay, who is a urologist with Cleveland Clinic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We have a lot to talk about. Vasectomies. All right. So for a lot of people who really don't understand what the process is, what is it?
So a vasectomy is a choice that men make when they are sure that they don't want to have kids. It's a minimally invasive procedure that can be done in an office relatively painlessly.
Okay, so when you say they want to stop their, the choice of getting pregnant or getting their partner pregnant, but is it 100%?
So it's very close. It is not 100%, but it's over 99% effective.
And you can do this in an office, so there's no hospital stay.
Exactly. So a vasectomy is one of these things that there's a lot of apprehension, a lot of anxiety about, and I think it's just because we don't always talk about it. So most commonly we do the procedure in an office setting with just some local anesthetic to make it comfortable.
How common is it?
It's pretty common. We do about 500,000 in the U.S. annually, and in recent years there have been a lot of academic papers showing that it's becoming more and more common.
Is it reversible?
That's a great question. It is reversible, but it takes a very specially trained surgeon to perform the reversal, and the reversal is quite successful, over 90 to 95% successful, but that's still not 100%. And they're also then making that decision to have yet another procedure.
So when a man goes in to have it done, is it, is that even part of the equation? Like they're thinking about, I want to stop it now, but maybe in the future I'm thinking about having it reversed, or no?
I get that question a lot, especially from younger guys. And I think the main important message that I want to give about vasectomies is that if you're not sure, do not have one. But if you're sure that you don't want any more kids, or even if you don't want kids at all, then it's a good decision.
So are there different types of procedures for vasectomy, or is there just one?
Yeah, the main concept of it remains the same, but there are different ways to do it. There is a traditional approach that requires an incision, but the way that many people often perform it, and the way that I like to do it, is what's called the no scalpel technique. And the recovery time for that is a lot easier. It's essentially just a little puncture on the scrotum, so on the skin in front of the testicles, and the recovery is a lot easier for that one.
Does it hurt?
Also a very good question. I will say that if you've ever had any kind of numbing medication for a procedure, like maybe at the dentist, or if you ever had to get a stitch, the worst part is just getting the numbing put in. So after the initial numbing medication, we use a little needle to put that in. We don't start until you're numb. So I think it's somewhat of the anxiety of getting into the doctor's office and getting that numbing medication in that's most uncomfortable. After that pinch, you're not supposed to feel any kind of sharp pain.
How long is recovery?
So recovery's not too bad. I always tell people the first 2-3 days, take a little pass, not to do chores, not to do work, and just lay on the couch, watch some TV. And then after that, I say don't do any heavy lifting for up to 7 days after your procedure. But you're still able to, watch TV, have a friend over, walk around your house, do sort of the light activities.
Can you go back to work?
You can, depending on what your job is. So for guys with really active jobs where they're definitely going to be lifting, they're going to be doing a lot of vigorous walking, climbing ladders, things like that, I would say pick a time when you can take those 7 days off. If you have more of a desk job, you can go back sooner.
So March Madness, that time of the year when everybody sits around and watches basketball, is that really the time most men go get this done?
It is. And it's a really good reason to do it around that time. There's a lot of guys getting it done. It's kind of like, you might have some other friends having it done around the same time. You can sit around and watch the game, and you have literally a doctor's note to be able to do that. So it's not a bad idea, and it is popular around that time.
This is the perfect time for the man cave.
Yes.
Wow, okay. So side effects, can there be side effects?
Yes, so I will say 99% of men, no complications from a vasectomy. It is very normal to have a little bit of soreness, a little bit of bruising. You can tell that someone, did a little work down in that area, but it is not meant to be excruciating by any means. So the vast majority of my patients are taking Tylenol, they're taking ibuprofen, they're using ice packs for comfort and a little bit of scrotal support. So not boxers, but something that's going to provide a little lift. But the number of men who are getting any kind of serious complications, very, very rare.
So that's where we come in with the frozen bag of peas,
Yes, frozen peas work very well. It's very funny that they work better than the ice packs that we send you home with. I think it's something about the contour, maybe, that you can get with all those little frozen peas.
Okay, so I know this is the $1 million question a lot of men have. Is it going to affect their sex life?
Great question. And that's probably the first question that I get is, what are you doing to my testicles? And I want to reassure men that we're not doing anything to their testicles. The testicles remain in place, the hormone levels are unaffected, the sex drive is unaffected, and the erections are normal just like before.
A lot of men want to know, what about the ejaculate? What happens after that?
Yes. So the amount of fluid that actually comes out of this tube, the vas deferens, is very minimal. It is less than about 10%, and that's about 0.2 milliliters. So the vast majority of the ejaculate that comes out is unaffected. I would say most men probably wouldn't notice a difference of 0.2 milliliters. What
are the biggest misconceptions about vasectomy?
Yeah, I think, one of the first questions that people ask is, is it going to affect my ability to enjoy sex? And that's important because you're doing this because you're making a choice, not to have kids in future, but you certainly still want to be intimate in future, with your partner. And there have actually been studies showing that people are more likely to have more frequent sex after having a vasectomy and maybe even enjoy it a little bit more because now they're not so worried that they might have the unintended consequence of an unplanned pregnancy.
But just because you have a vasectomy doesn't mean you can have unprotected sex.
Correct. So a vasectomy does not prevent against STIs or sexually transmitted infections. So, if your main concern is an unintended pregnancy, that's what it's meant for. But if you're, not sure about your partner's status, or if you think, you're not in a monogamous relationship and there may be a risk of getting a sexually transmitted infection, you still would need to do something else to have safe sex.
So what about the partner? She's already, had 2-3 kids and she doesn't want any more, and she wants him to get the vasectomy. Those couples who come to you, how do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think, reproduction and having kids is something that affects 2 people, but this is a very personal choice. And so I think it requires a lot of conversation for couples who aren't quite on the same page yet. I still say that if a man is not sure about getting a vasectomy, he should not get one. That doesn't mean that it's not going to be right in the future. And I think it is important to recognize that we do need to have this conversation. And so it's not something that a couple can just not talk about. I think communication is so important for couples when they don't quite see eye to eye just yet. But I do see a lot of men coming into the office to talk about this for specifically that reason. They at some point realize that their wives or girlfriends are taking on probably the lion's share of birth control choices, and they've seen their wife, go through, maybe complications of birth control pills or IUDs. They have seen their wife or partner go through a difficult pregnancy or a difficult labor. And at some point they're saying, let me do what I can to take on some of that burden as well, because I want to help out.
We're talking about the male birth control pill, the efforts for men, and we're still probably a decade away, if not longer, before we get that, even though there are efforts in the pipeline to get things. This has been around for years. You said you're seeing younger men coming in. How young are we talking? And are these men who really don't have partners, are men just making this decision on their own?
That's a great question, and that was something that we actually at the Cleveland Clinic were one of the first to publish on some recent changes and the type of man who's coming in to ask about vasectomy and to get it done. And we did find that younger men, on average, about 3 years younger than what traditionally were coming in to get the procedure done, and a big increase in men actually under the age of 30. And then, as you said, also men who don't have children, also an increase in that age group, saying, you know what, I've decided for sure that I don't want any kids, and seeing more of them come in as well. And I think the reason for that, could be multiple things. One thing I will say is that all these men coming in to get vasectomies had already made up their mind that they didn't want any other children. And the number for many people is going to be different. Some people, their number is 0. They know they don't want kids. Some people, that number is 2 or 4 or 6, but they've already made up their minds. I think recently, families are just having this discussion a little earlier, or men without partners are having this conversation a little earlier, to where they say, I've already made up my mind, let me just take that step a little earlier than I would have in the past.
Is it expensive or covered by insurance?
It is usually covered by insurance, and it's actually much less expensive than the corollary for women, which is tubal ligation.
Wow, okay. So what did I forget to ask you about this? What's the one thing you want men to know?
I think overall the takeaway is that a vasectomy is a minimally invasive procedure that doesn't affect your testicles, it doesn't affect your sex life in a bad way. If anything, it might help it in a good way. And it doesn't affect your ability to get intimate with your partner.
I had to say that because I'm not a man, so there you go. All right, Dr. Belay, thank you so much for your insight. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
The month of March can mean many things to many people. The end of winter, the start of spring, and of course, college basketball and March Madness. But is it also the month for vasectomies? You heard Dr. Belay talk about it. Brandon Lewis with our National Verify team looks deeper into the trend.
Some doctors' offices are using the hashtag #VasMadness to encourage men to get a vasectomy in time for the NCAA tournament. But is March really a popular month for vasectomies? Let's verify. Our sources are the Mayo Clinic, a 2018 study on vasectomies in the U.S. published in the Urology Gold Journal, and urologist Dr. Ajay Nangia with the University of Kansas Health System. A vasectomy is a medical contraception procedure that stops sperm from getting into semen. The Mayo Clinic says it takes a person a few days to heal. And Gia tells Verify around 20 years ago, a urologist launched an ad campaign to convince people to get a vasectomy and spend their recovery time watching March Madness.
Initially, it was much more of a sensationalism, but actually started becoming true. An urban legend that actually became true.
One study estimates about 500,000 vasectomies are performed each year in the U.S. Most are performed in March or at the end of the year after many people meet their insurance deductible. So, yes, March is a popular month for vasectomies. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
If snipping and sealing is not a route you want to go, there are some advances in male birth control. Jeremy Baker reports on a new medicated cream that has passed some clinical trials.
It's a first-of-its-kind use of a medicated cream that has completed successful FDA Phase 1 and 2 clinical trials, and it's the closest we have come to an actual male birth control pill ever.
The medication itself is not something new, but this usage of it, using it to inhibit sperm production in men for male birth control, this is a very new usage of it.
Here's how it works. The man rubs the medication named Nesterone on his shoulders daily, then allows it to dry. The cream reduces the sperm count and testosterone, which keeps the medication from affecting the man's sex drive or his muscle mass.
Sometimes it starts working as soon as 8 weeks. In the trial, they found that over 85% of men had sperm counts that were below kind of that magic number, less than 1 million per milliliter.
The CDC says between 2011 and 2015, nearly 60% of men reported using a male method of contraception at last intercourse. That could be a condom, withdrawal, or a vasectomy. Men also say they used condoms 45% of the time during their last intercourse. That percentage largely unchanged from the early 2000s. And since the medication has some sort of effect on testosterone levels, the effect of the Nesterone on those still has to be studied.
So that people that are taking this are getting no advantage in muscle mass or athletic ability, or if there's going to be some advantage. So that'll have to be worked out, and I'm sure that's something we'll see as far as the Phase 3 data.
Dr. Marchand says don't cancel your vasectomies just yet, since the average time to complete an FDA Phase 3 clinical trial is about 1 to 4 years, so it won't be on the market anytime before that. Jeremy Baker, KENS 5.
That'll do it for this edition of this week's Prescription for Life. Thank you so much for watching. Join us next week for another dose. Until then, I'm Monica Robbins, wishing you and yours good health.
Thank you so much for tuning into Health Yeah. Please find me on Twitter and Instagram at Monica Robbins. Like and follow my Facebook page, Monica Robbins WKYC. Find video podcasts at Monica Robbins channel on YouTube. And please subscribe. Wishing you great health and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for listening to Health Yeah with Monica Robbins from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now so you never miss an update. And find more on everything you heard here on WKYC.com and on the WKYC app.